Okay, we're on air. Welcome everybody for our informal discussion session. As you can see, we're live on Google Hangout and we have 0 viewers worldwide. This is my average audience. So we'll see how it goes. I tried to do this for my talk earlier. I was going to say upstairs, but I don't think it was upstairs. That failed completely. Too bad. I got the person who spoke before me recorded his entire talk, no problem. And then when I went on the stage, it crashed and I could not do anything about it, but oh well. So, and this is my modern technology here. It works. It's actually better than a tripod because I can swivel it, and so there you are. Now you're famous.
How can people watch this session? Do you have followers or anyone?
People can watch this. It's live on air right now, and I've advertised it on Twitter.
Oh, no.
So, and if they click on that link, they'll go here.
Isn't it either the middle of the night or first thing in the morning?
Well, that's the issue, yeah. So, according to my clock, it's 10 to 7 in the morning, which isn't so bad. I gave my talk earlier at 3 in the morning, so, and anyhow, I could start this and have the interesting experience of watching myself. Anyhow, I'm going to turn that off because I think I broke something. Well, maybe not. This is when all those paradoxes of time travel come into play. So bad. See, that's the fabric of reality here in the background. That's the experience. Yeah.
Life from next door.
Even worse. Wow. That must be another Intel session. Apple educators. That's craziness. So we'll all enjoy the advertising music for a little bit. Wow. I think it's actually coming through our speakers.
Just ask them
Oh, there we go. I don't believe it was on my computer.
Let's just try, at least.
No, it's not. It was from the other room, I think.
Next door.
It was
Next door.
It was from next door. Yeah.
Okay, no.
So, okay, I've never had that before. Okay, so enough fun. This is all fun. So this is an informal discussion. I don't have a prepared talk, obviously. I do have my computer here, so anything you can ask me, I can look it up on Google. And if I can't look it up on Google, well, I just don't know the answer. So I'll turn it over to all of you. I assume many of you were at my talk this morning. And, do you have any questions or comments that you would like to bring up?
Sorry, I wasn't in your session. I missed your session. Sorry, but I'm really curious about your way of one of your slides that my friend shared with me. It's about personalized and personal learning.
Right. I can bring that slide up here, actually, in about a second or two. And okay.
I think it's the one at the top.
Yeah. Thank you. So, yeah, this is the slide that you're thinking of here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or blank, one or the other. All right. So I'll just let the people online see. Actually, if I do that, probably all the text is backwards. No, I don't think so. Okay, so yeah, did you have a specific question, or do you want me to explain it, or?
Yeah, from an educator point of view, I'm not quite clear about the difference, the order of learning steps.
Okay.
I think I will take this session. Personally, I totally understood.
Yeah.
That was clear what you were trying to get across. But when you were trying to put personal into context, I couldn't see what you were driving at. I think that's why I had a bit of trouble understanding what you really meant by personal.
Okay, so there's an easy way of drawing the distinction. It's a bit of a caricature, but it's not bad. And I like to say that in personalized learning, something is done for you. And in personal learning, you do something for yourself. That's a bit of a caricature. Another way of drawing the distinction is by drawing similar distinctions between, say, a customized car, right? So that's a stock model. It came off the assembly line,
Yeah.
and then you put, paint on it and decals, whatever, as compared to a custom car, which is built for you from the ground up.
Right.
You see the distinction?
Yeah.
So, and what this chart is getting at is why that distinction is important. And in personalized learning, you begin with the car, right? The content in this case, right? You begin with, a topic or a domain already given that you're required to learn. And then they will, see, still not me. And then we'll we'll adapt it, we'll do differentiated learning on it, we'll do whatever, right? But the objective is set by the content. This is characteristic of formal learning. And I'm drawing the distinction between that and the type of learning that is driven by, for lack of a better phrase, user needs. I hate that phrase. But it's driven by, I put up here, defines a desired state. I don't like that phrase either, but the idea is that in informal learning, which this is characteristic of, the objective is not to acquire a certain body of content. The objective is to perform some task, solve some problem, complete some project. This is a model that is problems to solve. I mean, we find it bad. They must be like sitting there like this. Wow. This is a model that's much more appropriate, especially for things like workplace learning, where you really are addressing a particular domain and a need. But I argue, and I have another slide about motivation, in order to stimulate, well, I don't want to say stimulate, but in order to provide learning that people are motivated to undertake, you have to begin with what they want to do, what project they want to achieve, etc. And so they begin by trying, and the content comes in instead of being something you need to learn up front, the content is the solution to the problem. And the content helps you. And the person, by person here, I mean teacher, right? Or mentor or something like that, is intended to help you. And so the roles change a bit. The role of the instructor on the left-hand side is a tester or an evaluator. On the right-hand side is a supporter. I don't want to say coach or things like that, because that almost removes the area of expertise. Very often this person helps you by knowing stuff that you don't. So it becomes an iterative cycle based on need through cycles of practice, support, and iteration that gradually leads toward expertise.
I think the problem that I was having with it is to do with the use of language. As you know, language is a bit like an eel. It's very slippery. Meanings change. The terms that you were using under personalized can sound very similar to the sort of terms which in my domain, English language teaching, is related to an issue called assessment for learning, which is the idea that in a language, it should always be task-based. Can I do this? Can I, for example, explain where I live? Can I talk about myself, etc.? So it's very much task-based. Not, it shouldn't be present perfect, simple passive. Exactly. But the idea is that you give them a task to do, and if they struggle with it, you identify what the issues are, or the student identifies what the issues are. The content is then given for them to have a look at why they went wrong, and then they're offered to do the task again. Now that
sounds like the right-hand side.
It sounds personal, not personalized, but the terms used in our domain tend to be the term personalized. They tend to talk about practice, correction, content. So I think that's where I misunderstood you. Because the terminology you're using for personalized, but what we understand is what you mean by personal. So thank you for that.
Well, and like you say, language is an eel.
When I saw the slide, actually I was going to ask about the same slide here, personal. And the first question that came to my mind when I saw this slide was, what are the teacher roles? And then you answered it here, saying that he knows some stuff, so he shares with the learners. How about the roles of the curriculum developers, the roles of the directors, school directors in the personal model?
That's a terrific question. And I mean, when you say curriculum, like, okay, so we have the teachers, the curriculum director, that's I'm not sure that role actually carries over, but content developer does, right? So I'm going to address it in those terms, content developer as opposed to curriculum developer. I'm just guessing at where the camera is because I can't see it anymore. So if you're watching online and you're seeing like half a head, sorry. So content plays a role in both areas. But content on the left-hand side is predefined, and content on the right-hand side is, what's a good way of putting it? Because it's as needed, it's assistive, it's supportive. The structure of the content consequently ends up different. I had another slide in the presentation earlier today where I talked about the 3 domains of artificial intelligence. This relates really closely to that. The content on the left-hand side, because it's predefined, is going to be much more like the data employed by an expert system. And what I mean by that is it'll map out a domain. It'll map out the whole domain. There will be a canonical vocabulary. There will be standard ways of using words, standard ways of expressing words. There will be a knowledge base, an ontology, So you have a hierarchy of entities. There will be rules which specify how you manipulate or navigate through that hierarchy, that kind of structure. That whole kind of structure is a very different kind of organization of knowledge than would be appropriate on the right-hand side. The right-hand side, the kind of knowledge that you're looking for there is not the knowledge of an expert system, but rather the knowledge of an expert.
Doesn't the personal actually, the existence of a personal approach pretty much is against the whole idea of having a curriculum in the first place?
Yeah, well,
It
but
has to do with the idea of competency rather than standards and,
yeah,
and levels.
exactly. And that's why I said I wanted to talk, you know, I couldn't just talk about the curriculum designer, because in the second half, the right-hand side, there isn't really a curriculum. There is content, though, right? A person who is an expert electrician knows a lot of stuff, right? But it would be incorrect to take what that person knows and represent it as on the left-hand side with the vocabulary and the structure and all of that, the ontologies. You could do that, and sometimes that's known as capturing knowledge. Sometimes it's known as converting tacit knowledge into explicit knowledge, etc. But the problem is, a lot of what the expert electrician knows cannot be stated, cannot be defined. And what happens in this case is the way the person helps you is they watch what you're doing, and then there's an act of recognition that happens. So they see what you're doing and they go, oh, you're making that mistake. Here, let me give you this suggestion. Or you're doing that thing. Here's how it's normally done. So the knowledge, the content that's presented in that case is very specific to the person and to, well, you know, technically the phenomenon that the person presented, you know, but basically the person and the thing the person was trying to do and the effort that they made and the source of their failure. It's organized differently. Ultimately, down the line, long time in the future, we'll have software made up of neural networks that can function in this way. Neural networks are still a long way away from that. They're really good, but they're not really good at real-time recognizing and responding in a widely varied kind of environment. They just take too much training. That's why people use expert systems, right? They're faster. They get right to the answer quickly, but they're lousy at recognizing a particular problem or domain. So for now, we need people. And for the foreseeable future, we'll need people for this. And we'll need two things, right? We'll need the expert in and of themselves who can see performance, or, and I mean the wider community, which functions in the same way as a single expert, but is instead, you know, a larger network of individuals all watching this performance and providing feedback. Which is kind of what's happening now, except it's not a huge crowd of people, but there's a bunch of you, and I'm looking at the feedback you're all providing me to see if I'm on track, if I need to explain more or stop speaking or whatever. Does that make sense? It's a hard concept, because, you know, normally we think of knowledge, oh yeah, there's knowledge, right? But I mean, there's the two kinds of content here are very differently structured.
There is just one area that I'm really curious to go into deeper side of this. How about the typical formal education setting?
Mm-hmm.
And we have standards, we have nationwide tests,
Yeah.
and that, and you can just liberate design his or her own way of, doing this or doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So how are we going to get these standards?
Yeah.
And how are we going to have lawyers doing this, but I'm a lawyer, but I'm sorry, I can't do this, or a medical doctor in thousands variations. That's the area.
That's a hard one. And we always end up there, which is why I put those slides at the end of my talk today. And I kind of zipped through them because people in the back of the room were going, they really were. That's what they were doing. It's funny because I didn't notice them. I finally noticed them. They were practically jumping. Oh, it's terrible. So let's back up a couple of steps, because the premise of what you're saying is exactly right. And the premise is that over time, and I would say by now, not very long a time, I first suggested in my own writing that this would happen in 1998. And I've been waiting for it ever since, but it is happening. I think we can see it. The separation between learning and assessment. It's always been a bit of a conflict of interest where the teacher does the testing, right? And really, the trend is toward, on the one hand, you have agencies of whatever sort that help you learn, and on the other hand, you have agencies that evaluate this learning. That's going to become more and more pronounced. There's all kinds of reasons for it. Just like you say, if you do it that way, people can figure out how to learn on their own. They find their own support, etc. The existing mechanism, again, as you point out correctly, is to use tests. Classic example is the driving test, right? Clear case where the teaching is separated from the assessment. And I assume it's the same in Turkey as it is at home. You go to Department of Motor Vehicles, you do a written test, which is a ridiculously easy multiple choice. And then later on, you have the actual driving test. And we want to do it that way because we do not want the teachers to certify the drivers, because that would be incredibly dangerous for everyone. But if we look at these tests, and yeah, there are standards, and the person sitting there giving you the driver's test, again, I'm sure it's the same here as in Canada, they have a checklist of things. I know that because I took it twice when I was young, but then I had to retake it, less than 10 years ago, because I stopped driving for a number of years, so I had to go back. So now I'm back looking at this as an educator. It was all very interesting. And in my case, it really posed the examiner with a dilemma, because I'm an experienced driver taking this test. I know all the shortcuts, all the easy ways of doing things. It's, fast, comfortable. I'm not worried about driving. He's checking off these things. I hit every check box, right? Shoulder check, yeah. Use the mirror, yeah. Parallel parking, first time. The guy couldn't believe it. Oh, nobody does that, right? But he didn't like my driving. He hated my driving because it was relaxed. He called it, he's from New Brunswick, he called it aggressive. It's not aggressive. Driving 10 kilometers an hour through a parking lot is not aggressive, but he thought it was. He had to pass me. But, there's this difference between the check marks and the assessment. And he had to pass me because he has to use the standards, even though he thought I was a bad driver. If it was a pilot's license, or if I was interning to be a surgeon, a brain surgeon or whatever, there's no way I'm passing the test. Because the process of evaluation isn't the standards-based method. in fact. It's recognition by an expert. Think about it. That's how we actually do it. You know, we say we have standards, competencies, outcomes. All of these things are rationalizations after the fact. But what's really happening in pretty much every school, every university course, and certainly any discipline that matters is somebody who's already an expert looks at what you're doing, makes a snap judgment. Can they do that? No. Okay, let's find out why, right? And then after the fact, we figure out why they're not doing well. The assessment is a recognition process, not a standards-based process. And it's ironic, we teach people the left-hand way, but we test them the right-hand way, which is why, in my view, so many people fail. A long answer, but it's a really important question. And just as an aside, if we come to this, so this is the other way of saying the same thing. So we do our performance in order to learn. That's a neural network there. That's our brain, right? And that's our workplace or our school environment or whatever. So, okay, so learning is a process of acquiring the skills, capacities, etc. in our brain. It's the creation of neural states. But the question is, how do we know we've learned? We skip over to here. We recognize that a person has the appropriate state by the performance in the workplace or in the activity. And the interesting thing is, a human being is a perceptual system that recognizes. A social network, like an online community, is a perceptual system that recognizes. We individually and collectively say, yes, that person is an expert, or no, that person is an expert, typically without any criteria at all.
My question has actually been largely answered by the previous ones. It was quite nice, each one answered a little bit of the question, but the last part is following on from this. I mean, have you had any success stories in working with institutions in implementing these approaches to living? Because like all the way through your presentation, I was going like, yes, yes, yeah. But could we do this?
Could we do this? Yeah.
Do you have any success stories to inspire us?
So, yes and no. Sorry, online people. The world is moving like that, like that. All right. So I'm not teaching in a school or university right now. So the short answer is no, right? Because how could I? I work for the government. I literally do not have students. That said, the work that I've been doing over especially the last 15 years, but also longer, is as a researcher in learning development. And my friend George Siemens and I explicitly adopted these principles and related principles when we offered our online course in 2008 called Connectivism and Connective Knowledge. Now, that course was the first massive open online course. And since then, the phenomenon of the massive open online course has, well, developed a life of its own. It was actually, I'm in the hotel room watching TV and they're talking about massive open online courses, which is really kind of a weird thing, because there was a time when 4 people knew that term and we were all in the same room and nobody else had ever heard of it. So in a sense, that's a success. And if you think about even the, you know, the, what's a good polite word? The adaptation of the concept by companies like Coursera and Udacity, they still have to follow the approach that we took to a certain degree, because they're not in a position where they're evaluating and testing people, not in the sense of, you know, the formal, I guess that chart's not there anymore, but pretend you're looking at the old chart, my point there. Everybody understood that, isn't that fascinating? I can point to the far side of that screen, and you all know I'm referring to something that we saw 3 slides ago. It's fascinating. Cognition is fascinating. So there's that. The people we worked with in our connectivism course in 2008, we taught it again in 2009. The people, not all of them, but many of them came back the second year, which is really kind of weird because who comes back to the same course the following year? But they wanted to, and you know, okay, well, that's cool. And the strangest thing is, about a week, 2 weeks into the course, I observed that they were basically teaching the course. And the course had assumed an identity very different from what I had expected going in. So, again, I call that success. More concrete examples. There are entire communities of people, for example, around open source software, who learn what they're doing not by the left-hand side, but by the right-hand side. There's, you know, everybody at this point in their presentations talks about the website called Stack Overflow, right? Yeah, and yeah, okay. I used to, when I was back in, 10 years ago, I used to use a site called Web Reference. It was the same thing, right? And that's the one that dominated the search results. But again, it's the idea of having a need, trying to find the answer, finding someone online to help you over that, and it works. The first time I encountered this was before I started working at the National Research Council, actually. I was developing something called Munimall, horrible name, it wasn't mine, but it was a knowledge, information, and resources portal for the municipal sector in Alberta. There's elected officials, town managers, people like that. And we researched how people learned when they're on the job running a town or being mayor or a council member. And the answer was they pick up a phone and call somebody and ask them. That was their predominant learning method. That's how knowledge of municipal governance is carried over from one council to the next in Canada. Until our program came along, there were no formal programs. You just learned it on the fly. And so we drew from that lesson. So I think that's a success story, because by and large, municipal governance in Canada is successful. So those are the sorts of stories that I can tell. They're not your classic, I took a class of 24 Midwestern undergraduate students, gave 12 of them this intervention and 12 of them that intervention. The studies don't, there are no studies like that. I'm not sure there ever will be.
Could I go back to the personal slide for a moment?
Mm-hmm.
I had sort of 2 questions.
So we're actually going to look at it. All right.
Yeah. Just looking at the personal side, I have sort of 2 questions, but there's another one embedded in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
You're an online gamer, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
Right, okay. So I want you to think about when you play online games, especially when you're playing a massive online game where you're communicating with people all over the world. Maybe you've got your headphones on and your little speaker.
So when I played those, it was before headphones and speakers.
Yeah, you sort of World of Warcraft, Witcher type game.
Yeah, they were called MUD, and they were text-based.
In the old days they were, weren't they? Yes. In a sense,
Open door.
What
Or
the
as
gamer-
what? Open door with key.
that's the one, yeah. In a way, what the gamer goes through when they play those games is personal, isn't it? Because they in many, especially the new games, where they've got these huge worlds. You choose your own tasks. You choose where you go on the map. You choose your own paths.
You try these things out. It doesn't work. You work out what you're good at. You
Yep.
go around again. You may talk to other people, find people to cooperate, not collaborate.
Cooperate, yeah.
with, and you, in the end, you win the game, hopefully.
Yeah.
So it's a personal learning.
Totally.
So for me, that's gamification.
Okay.
And that is where the message for learning
Yeah.
is. Not scoreboards,
Yeah.
not leaderboards, not points.
Yeah.
It's about leveling up, powering up, challenging, cooperation, choosing your own path.
Yeah, even leveling up is a little more points based than I like, but I
Okay.
get the concept.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I remembered in this morning session, you
Yeah.
stuck to the scores side of gamification.
Yeah, I was on a thing. No, we have to put this in context. Get this right. I can't tell, so now I'm paranoid that it's not right. Sorry, how many viewers do we have? We have one viewer.
Hi. Hi.
Everybody wave to our viewer.
I hope it doesn't mean you.
No, it is not me, actually. I've in the past, I've had one viewer and actually confirmed the identity of that one viewer. So, and it may well be the same viewer. Actually, no, I mean, it might be too early for him, so I don't know. I don't know who it is. Anyhow, it's not my wife. So, where was I?
You were saying the context, you had a thing.
Oh yeah, I have a thing. So yesterday, instead of preparing for my talk, completely coincidentally, I read an article that came out in Contact North. I mentioned that at the top, and spent the entire day writing a long article about why that article was wrong. I do that sometimes. And generally I do that when I'm on the road because I cannot possibly do that at home. I put the red light on the hotel room. I was up at 4 in the morning. Nobody bothered me all day until late at night. And they said, oh, we need your slides. And there's a lot of talk about badges. There's a lot of talk about using points to motivate people. A lot of talk about competition, motivating competition. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, as I'm writing this, we have a world now that is more complex than ever. And complexity doesn't just mean a lot more interactivity, a lot more of anything. Complexity arises out of interdependence. And we live in a more interdependent world than ever. Globalization isn't about distance, it's about mutual relations. We're also in an environment of increasing resource scarcity. We're in an environment where there aren't going to be jobs because we have robots. And quite literally, productivity in my lifetime has gone through the roof. We produce so much stuff in society. We don't get any of it, but we produce it. So this whole thing of competition for jobs and etc. It's all of that is so counterproductive to the way our society is going to have to run in order to be successful in the future. So that's what's on my mind. Right, and then I hit the gamification part of that paper, and they're talking about badges, and I have this mental image of a resume with badge. And if you think about it, a badge rewards an hour of learning. A course is 40 hours of learning. A program is, 40 courses. So you're going to have 1,600 badges on your resume. It's not going to happen. It's absurd to think of that. And I'm afraid to think of what my resume would look like. So, and then the point system that basically sets people in competition with each other instead of cooperation. Again, it's not a healthy strategy for coping with the kind of environment we're going to have to cope with. And, you know, architecture's control, I think, was it you that I talked with about, or no, it was somebody else who also designs games. And he was saying, well, you know, we manipulate people, we get them to want this and get them to want that. Architecture does result, you know, has an impact, has an effect on people. And if people come out of our educational systems thinking that appropriate behavior is to try to amass as many points as you can, to compete with others, you know, and while we're at it, you know, gather all the resources to ourselves, it's not an effective way of preparing them for the world that's coming. The world that's coming is, as I said in the last slide, cooperative, sharing, open, diverse, and yes, interactive. Those are the strategies that people will need. And those are the strategies that we need to have be necessary in order to be successful. And they're never associated with gamification.
I think I'm actually somebody who's very interested in gamification, but I'm on your side of the fence.
Yeah.
Gamification and challenge and cooperation.
Yeah.
I'm totally against the idea of boards, scoring, badges, etc. It's
Yeah.
an online game.
Yeah.
Rather than the
I was
Candy Crush.
just going to say, less PBL, more RPG.
yeah.
Yeah.
Candy Crush, more World of Warcraft.
Yeah. Right now I'm playing something called The Sunless Sea. It's by Steam. I'm playing it because it'll run on this computer when pretty much all of my regular games won't. They used to, but then I put Windows 10 on it.
Oh, that murdered it.
Oh,
That
it
absolutely
murdered it, yeah. Fully 48% of my memory is occupied running Windows. Craziness. But The Sunless Sea is really good.
I'm just looking at it.
Yeah. I tend to play strategy games more like Civilization, and this is more of an RPG, but it's nice. It's quite nice. Maybe one more question. I saw them flashing the time at me in the back. So, sure.
Yeah. In one of the following slides, you talked about the new institutional perspective, from management to meaning. Where don't do things to people, and those four items there that you put. My context is an English medium university. They go and take students, they take intensive English program, they need to pass a proficiency test at the end, and then join their departments during freshman year, and start taking their classes.
Yeah.
In this context, how do I apply personally? Because here it's all predefined objectives, you know, learning outcomes, all written for people, not with people.
Yeah. You know, so you're sort of like saying, you know, how do I encourage people to express themselves and be free while they're in jail? There's a bit of a conundrum there. But look, I went through that system. I didn't have to go through the language. Actually, they did give me a language test, now that I think about it. Even in Canada. They just applied it, and yeah, I passed. Okay. Yes, he is literate. Okay, good. He can go to university. What saved me, and quite literally saved me, because I strain at these constraints, is the out-of-class activities. The very first day I was on campus at the University of Calgary, I went to the student newspaper office and said, I would like to volunteer for the student newspaper. And that's where I spent the better part of the next 5 years. was in that office. I did go to class most of the time. Well, in the last few years, it was most of the time. In the first few years, it was some of the time. Which is weird because, you know, I'm spending all this time and spending all this money to go to university. And I spent all my time working at the student newspaper, but that's basically where I got my education. That's where the stuff is going to apply. It's not going to apply in your classes. It's not going to apply in your examinations or anything like that. It's going to happen in the cracks between that. Your job is to make sure that there are cracks, right? Your job is to give them some room in which they can develop these things. Do they have their own newspaper? Maybe there should be space for that, right? Or, you know, maybe they do, like, because it's the electronic age, maybe they do podcasting or blogging, whatever. Is there room for that? Do they have other clubs and associations? I fell into the newspaper. It could have easily have been, I don't know, the debate club, the environment club, not the ski club. Just wasn't the right kind of person for that. But other people, you know, that's where it has to happen. It's not going to happen in a formal structure. So,
Another viewer.
pardon?
Got another viewer.
Oh, I got 2 viewers? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm lost.
oh, I lost
Right at
me.
the end. Oh, it's gone again.
Connington. For one brief shining moment. Okay, that's the 45 minutes.
Thank you very much.
It felt like 15, so thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Bye, viewer. Thank you for joining us. And bye, viewers of the future who are watching this recording. I hope the future is as good as the past was.